Okay, hi guys, it's Mrs. Arnold, and today we are going to be taking some notes about adding integers, which is our new chapter. So if you don't already have out your spiral notebook and your pencil, let's get that going, push pause, and then we'll get started. Here we go. Write down, this is Module 3, Operations with Integers. Module 3, Operation with Integers. Our learning intention for this chapter is that we are learning how to compute with integers. For today, we're going to be starting in section 3.1. This is on adding. So our success criteria today is just I can add integers. Let's start with adding. Before we get into adding, we need to remind ourselves what is an integer. Okay, an integer is any whole number or its opposite. So what do I mean by that? Think about the number line that you were just using. Whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then the opposite of 1 would be -1. Opposite of 2, -2, -3, -4, and so on. When you were playing the game and using the number line, that is really, we were practicing adding integers. So let's talk about that a little bit more. When we're using a number line, if it is a positive number, then we are going to go to the right. We're going to move to the right on the number line. If it is a negative number, then we are going to move to the left on the number line. Positive to the right, negative to the left. Let's try an example. If I have -3 plus -4. So let's draw a number line here. And I'm going to put my 0 about here. And I know I'm going to be going this direction. So we're going to start by moving to the left 3. So start at 0 like you did in the game, and we're going to move left 3. 1, 2, 3. So we went left -3. Okay, so right now I'm at -3. Then we have plus -4. So from here, we're going to go another -4. So again, to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I check where I'm at, -3, -4, -5, -6, we're at -7. So the answer, this was -4, so the answer would be -3 plus -4 is -7. We moved 3 to the left and then 4 to the left to get -7. We could do this also on a vertical line. Kind of think about a thermometer, for example. If I am looking at a thermometer, it might be written vertically. So if this is 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, and so on. If it says -2, that would be the same as going down 2. That's -2. And then -4 would be going down 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. So where did I land? I landed at -6. So this is the way that we can use a number line to think about how we're going to get our answer. In the same way, the ones you're used to doing, something as simple as 4 plus 1, when we're just adding positives, you would go, if we think about this number line up here, I would go over 4 to the right and 1 more to the right, and I would be at 5. Well, we already know that. That's something that's easy for us to do, but we could use a number line to figure that out as well. And you may have used a number line when you first learned how to add positive numbers. So all the ones that we've tried so far have had the same sign, either both negatives or both positives. So let's write our rule for when we have the same sign. Same sign. So when we have the same sign, you are going to add, that's the key, the absolute values. Remember, the absolute value is just the distance. So I'm really just adding 3 and 4, 7. I'm just adding 2 and 4, 6, or 4 and 1, 5. You add the absolute value, but then you're going to keep the sign that is with both numbers. So if it was 3 plus 4 is 7, I keep the negative, negative 7. Keep the negative, negative 6. Keep the positive, positive 5. So a couple more examples real quick. If I had negative 8 plus negative 7, I would think I'm adding 8 plus 7 is 15, and then I'm going to keep the sign, negative 15. If I have 9 plus 2, they're both positive. You just add. 9 plus 2 is 11. You keep the sign. It's positive 11. Okay, that's how we would do it with the same sign. All right, let's move on to what happens if they're not the same sign. What happens if they are opposite signs? So I ran out of room, so I'm turning the page. If you still have room, you can use your same page. Let's write down our next vocab word, which is opposites. Opposites just mean that they have the same absolute value, but different signs. An example would be 3, its opposite, negative 3. Or if I start with negative 7, its opposite, 7. Okay? Now, another word for opposites, which is more fancy that we're learning today, is called an additive inverses. Additive inverses. Write that word down because that's a new word that you may not know. Additive inverses. This is just two integers that are opposites. So in your homework, when they say what is the additive inverse, they're just asking you what is the opposite. So for example, if they give you the integer is negative 1, then the additive inverse of negative 1 would be its opposite, or 1. If they say the integer is negative 5, its additive inverse would be 5. If they say 8, the additive inverse would be negative 8. Another thing you may notice about the additive inverses is that if you add them together, what happens? If I add these together, a negative 1 and a positive 1, and this maybe happened when you were rolling your dice on the number line game, you got back to 0. If you start at negative 5 and then you add 5, you're at 0. If you start at positive 8, but then you go backwards 8, you're also at 0. So all of these additive inverses, when added together, give you 0. That is actually called the additive inverse property. That says the sum of an integer and its additive inverse is 0. Additive inverse property. The sum of an integer and its additive inverse is 0. So we would write that out like 4 plus negative 4 is equal to 0. We could also write that out with variables. A plus negative a is equal to 0. This is going to help us when we think about adding with different signs. So let's move on to that. Adding with different signs, meaning one will be positive and one will be negative. Well, again, let's draw ourselves a number line. Put some numbers on here. I just went to negative 3 and then all the way to 4. Pick this up. Okay, let's try an example. Looking at and using our number line. If I had negative 3 and I add 6. So think about your dice game again. If you start at 0 and you go negative 3, we're going left to negative 3. But then the paperclip, or you're at negative 3, if I add 6, I'm going to have to go to the right 6. So I'm starting here, and I'm going to go over 3 plus then 3 more. That's a total of 6. I went to the right 6. Where do I end? At positive 3. You're going to notice that negative 3 plus 6 is equal to positive 3. Let's try another one. If I have, let's start with a positive. 2 plus negative 3. So if I start with 2, I'll do a different color here. If I start at 2, I would go right 2. Start here, that's plus 2. But then if I go negative 3, I got to go to the left. So from here, I have to go backwards. 1, 2, 3. So where do I end up? At negative 1. So that answer would be negative 1. Okay, so that's how you would use your number line. Notice though, if I just think about their absolute values, 6 and 3, I get 3. 2 and 3, I get 1. What am I doing? I'm not really adding those numbers. I am subtracting those numbers. Okay, I'm going to move to a new page. Pause if you need to. Let's write our rule for different signs. So we already have a rule for same signs. Now we're going to write one for different signs. For different signs, you are going to subtract the absolute values, and you're going to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. Okay? So let's do an example of that. So again, different signs, subtract the absolute values, keep the sign of the larger absolute value. If I have 10 plus negative 22. By the way, these parentheses are just setting off the negative, so don't get too worried about the parentheses. It just means 10 plus negative 22. They are different signs, so I'm going to take the two numbers and subtract them. I'm going to put the bigger number on top and subtract without their signs, and I get 12. Then I'm going to look at the two signs, and I kind of think of it as which one wins. Do you have more positives or more negatives? We have more negatives, so this is a negative 12. Another way to think about it when you're doing this is I like to think about money. If I have $10 in my pocket, but I owe someone $22, I can pay the $10, but I still owe $12. So sometimes that makes more sense to think about it that way, or think about your number line. You went right 10, you're going to go left 22. That's going to put us in the negatives, negative 12. Here's another one, negative 43 plus 29. Take your absolute values. So I'm just going to take the two numbers, put the bigger one on top without their signs, absolute values, and subtract. So this gives me 14. I look at the two numbers, which one wins, which one has more negatives. So this answer is negative 14. Again, if I owe someone $43, but I only pay off $29, I still owe them $14. One more example. If I start with negative 18 and I add 26. Again, different signs, so I'm going to subtract, put the larger one on top, just subtract the two numbers. I get 8. I look at the two, which one has more negatives or positives? This time positives win, so this is positive 8. You do not have to put the positive there, but it does help you remember that you thought about the sign. So I recommend it, but you don't have to put it. 8, you could have also just wrote 8. All right, that's pretty much what you're doing today. You can use the number line. You can think about the rule that I gave you for same sign, different sign. You can think about money. That's often helpful, or temperature. Those can help you think about it. Now, what if we have more than two numbers? So you will come across a couple of these on your homework where you have more than two numbers. For an example, if I have negative 26 plus 74 plus negative 14. One way to do this is to just look at it and only do them two at a time. So do the first two, ignore this one. They have different signs, so I'm going to subtract. So over here to the side, I'm going to do 74 minus 26 and figure out what that is. Okay, that is 48. I decide which sign. 74 is more, so it's positive. Then I have plus negative 14. I bring that down. Now I'm doing, again, 2 at a time. They are different signs, so I'm going to have to subtract 48 minus 14. Oops, I should not have borrowed. That was a mistake. Oops. So I get 34. And which one wins? The positive wins. They're more positive. So the answer is 34. That is one way to do it. Let's take the same problem and I'll show you the second way to do it. Some people like to do it this way better. Same problem. Another way to do it is to combine the ones that are the same first. So if I take the negative 26 and the negative 14 first, they're the same sign. Do those two first. So I'm going to add them. So negative 14 and negative 26, when I add them, I keep that sign, I get negative 40. But I still have to bring down the 74. Now they're different signs, so I subtract 74 minus 40. I get 34. Which sign wins? The positive, positive 34. I get the same answer either way that I do it. Just remember that you're doing them 2 at a time. So you can rearrange the numbers, but you still need to do them 2 at a time. Okay, next, after you're done taking your notes, you're going to do a few examples and a puzzle sheet on paper. Then you're going to do on Canvas a digital mystery picture, which works similar to the one we did before, where you type in the number and picture should appear if you have it right. Your homework is going to be on ALEKS today. It's section 3.1. That is for homework. And then if you have extra time, there's a fun game called Orbit Integers that you are welcome to play. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.